but I do think, I know that in the other community that I was involved with, there was a building permit for the tents. And there is provisions that you have to go through, I'm assuming. The fire marshal has to be involved
Absolutely.
in it, and all the rest of them. I mean, there's some.
Our building official makes sure the tent's meets our code.
Certain
Our
wind,
fire marshal
certain
makes sure
wind.
the fabric is inflammable, and there's
Exactly.
ingress and egress, and if you're cooking with open flame, you can't be located in certain areas. So there's all kinds of
20 feet away.
Right.
All kinds of restrictions on that. So it's not just, they're gonna have to go get permission every time, every year through the permitting process.
Okay.
Sorry, brought it up.
The next recommendation is to add frontage requirements for the R1 zoning districts. Currently in the ordinance there are not any frontage requirements. There are minimum lot requirements, but there are no frontage requirements. And what this can lead to is the development really of substandard lots. And I did a real rudimentary drawing of what we're talking about here. There are cases where there are platted lots that are on the other end of a terminated or ended road. To develop this lot, currently you can currently develop this lot by simply just building a driveway, not up to city standards, to develop this lot. Requiring minimum lot frontage would require the continuation of a road to the city standards so you can develop the lot accordingly. And this gives protection from the engineering department standpoint of ensuring that the road is built into compliance instead of allowing the driveway to continue from that road stub to that lot.
That was a deal that was granted last week. That was exactly the condition that was granted. Was the extension of that road, just being a drive. But the requirements on that also said that the front yard setback was not the yard, not across the front. It was actually the side yard.
Right, and that's another issue is you get, if you don't have a road in front of you, it creates a whole sort of confusion about what, and this also would eliminate, there are some other limitations, but the creation of flag lots, which are lots that are in depth behind another lot. And so it's not unusual, it's actually pretty standard that you have minimum frontage requirements as part of the ordinance, and it was not included in the last, in the latest revision, so.
We had a provision in our old ordinance that was very, very difficult to understand. And it was interpreted in such a way that it required frontage, but if I had 5 different people read it, I could get 5 different interpretations of what it said. We're just gonna say, we're gonna define frontage, and we're gonna say, you gotta have this is what we need for frontage. It's gonna be simple.
So to do that, we're gonna add a definition, and this is a pretty standard definition that's used in most ordinances. And coupled with that, we're gonna add a frontage into the table, add a frontage column, and the frontage column is equal to the minimum lot width, so it's consistent with lot width. And then we put some additional provisions into how you measure frontage for curved lots and or cul-de-sac lots, because obviously a cul-de-sac does not have the same distance across the road frontage. So
Could you go back one slide? How many buildings do we still have in Troy that have no sewers?
We've got areas that
Lake Charnwood went through and had sewers put in a few years ago.
I had a woman contact me today who was interested in buying a parcel, and that parcel was not served by sewer, and in fact it had failed the perk test in the past. There's still property that's not served by sewer, surprisingly enough.
How close are we?
Well, there's not a lot, but there's enough.
enough to require 2 different lot dimension requirements. Any questions or issues or concerns?
Everybody good?
I should have bet you on how many we could
You've
through.
used up your 20 minutes, you better hurry.
We got one more, and then
We can do it.
Oh no, not this one.
similar to our discussion about hotels, there became an issue with extended stay facilities, and the reason it came up was there are 2 extended stay facilities in Troy, and one of the one of the current owners came in to us because they were trying to get refinancing and they didn't comply with they didn't meet the zoning requirements when they went through the bank went through the check. And the reason was because we didn't have it as a use in the ordinance. In previous practice, we treat it similar to a hotel, but in actual reality, they're really more like multifamily and apartment uses rather than hotel uses. They have their own kitchen facilities. People stay there for a longer term. It's not as transient as hotel uses. So what we're recommending is to just bring the ordinance more into compliance about what's actually out there, is to add extended stay facilities as a use in the table and label it similar to how we would label multifamily in terms of the use requirements. So it's permitted use in the UR and the multifamily residential as well as the IB district. And the existing 2 facilities are located in these 3 districts, so it would make that conforming.
Good.
There's something that I've never understood, and that's when we have a group home in a neighborhood, what do they fall under? You have R1B, you'll have an R1B neighborhood, and they'll build a group home in it. What kind of regulations and that are there on these group homes? And what would they fall under? Would there have to be special usage in a residential neighborhood for this? How's that regulated?
Group homes are a protected use by state laws that passed, and so there's different size requirements. So there's a 1 to 6 classification for group home, 6 to 12 person, and 12 and above, and they have different classifications. And they're a protected use. You can't completely not allow them. They're pretty much allowed in any residential district by state statute.
The 1 to 6 is essentially considered a home, a residence. You can't regulate it above and beyond.
I understand that, but what are the regulations in sizes and setbacks, and is there anything different than there would be on a R1B?
No, it would be the same as a home, and the intent is the intent goes back years ago where it was determined that it would be a good thing to deinstitutionalize, care for human beings. It was like humanizing people in institutions. So the intent was to get them in neighborhoods and put them in homes that looked like a home and fit in the neighborhood. So to that end, they basically have to meet the same regulations from a zoning perspective as a single family home for area, setbacks, et cetera.
And the real significant difference is that there are requirements in terms of lot area based on the number of people, so you don't cram. The intent was you didn't cram a bunch of people into a small home. So I think it's 4,000 square feet per individual.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the 1 7 to 12.
I never understood
6 to 6 to
that.
12, and then 12 and above. There's different size requirements.
What's the definition of extended stay? Is it,
According to that slide, it's outdoor special event.
nice.
I have one question on that too. You chose to model it after a multifamily dwelling unit and there's a perfect match with multifamily dwelling unit, but I just think we should discuss the differences between lodging versus an extended stay facility as well, because I think it might be worth some discussion, because they are similar even though they're different.
Yeah.
They're more transient than an apartment building,
Yes.
and so they'll often have like an office tie-in and stuff like that, signage requirements.
It's a good point. It's got to go somewhere, and it's got to be permitted either by right or by special use. And this is kind of the tack that Ben and I agreed upon. But if the planning commission as a body feels that it's more transient, like you raise a good point. There's an office associated. There's signage. It is more transient than multifamily residential or apartments. If you feel it should be maybe special use, let's talk about it. I can buy that. I buy your argument. I agree with you. Is it enough to trigger the special use application? That's the question.
My understanding, and I know for a fact that one of them is, but it was my understanding that both of the extended stay facilities that were mentioned were consent judgments. They are not zoned. I live directly across the street from one of them, and I assure you it bears very little resemblance to a multifamily property, because the multifamily property that I live in does not have buses or semi-trucks or car haulers parking in it. And we don't have 25-foot tall light posts. So saying that an extended stay hotel is similar to multifamily residential is stretching the definition of multifamily residential a whole lot.
I think, I don't believe it's consent judgment, the one that you're talking about.
That's what we were told at the time,
Is that the corner?
Yep.
Okay, it is that, I apologize, it is.
right on the corner.
The other one on Livernois is not consent judgment.
So what is it, an extended stay?
It's overnight accommodation primarily for periods of 1 week or more.
The extended stays that we have here in Troy are hotels. Basically. Some people stay in them for extended periods, but
Right, it's,
they come and go just like they do at a Holiday
Yeah.
Inn or a Hyatt or anyplace else.
yeah, generally jobbers come in to a big project and then leave.
Yeah, we're not married to the districts they're in. Mostly want to get it into the ordinance, into the use regulation. So if you want us to mirror the lodging designation, that's fine.
Yep, no problem.
So then it would be like if a new one wanted to go in, it would be a
Special use.
Special use,
Or if an existing
Or-
one wanted to expand, and they will not have received special approval, they've got to go get
Yeah.
special approval.
it'll be a permitted use, I think, in general business as well as the IB district too.
Can there something be done to mitigate the situation like that Bob refers to? It sounds like it's the question of the parking.
I'm not complaining, and I want to make it clear that I'm not complaining. The extended stay on Kurtz is a very nice facility, but to say that it is similar in any way, shape, or form to multifamily residential, it is not. It is a commercial endeavor. And multifamily residential is not a commercial endeavor, it is a residential development. And there's considerable difference between the two.
Okay, I think that's,
Do we allow commercial vehicle parking then in a residential area? And I think the answer to that is generally no.
But a hotel has to allow commercial vehicle parking. That's their business.
So that's why it is a hotel.
That's right.
This has nothing to do with zoning, but I can tell you that we've had a number of graduation parties where we've ticketed up to 20 kids for minors in possession, and they have been at extended stay places. And that's
For
a
one night.
one-nighter at the stand there at the motel rooms. I mean, they're renting
They do
them out.
rent them out for what?
They rent them out for one night. We've had quite a few of those graduation parties over the years.
Okay. Well, we'll clean it up and so that the use districts are similar to hotel.
I mean, I'm not saying they should be the same, but I think we should consider the differences now that we understand a little more about the nature.
Mhm.
That's good, good job, guys.
That's it? Yep. Thank you.
No, 12 the tough.
12.
14 minor ones.
So what I would recommend as the next step I don't know if it's the next meeting, but the one after that, we'll come back with amended language based on what we have just discussed tonight. And then we will schedule a public hearing after that.
Yeah.
I think those are good additions to the ordinance.
Thank you.
All right then. Other business, public comment? No public, no comment. Thank you. Let's go around the table with planning commission comments. Eric, let's start with you. Anything tonight?
No comment.
Mr. Sanzica?
I'm just curious, what do we have in that, I believe it's called the Gaucho Resident or Brazilian Steakhouse on Rochester Road, south of Bacanos?
Mr. Salvador?
What happened?
Is it going through, or is it, I haven't seen any progress.
They, my understanding is they're for whatever reason, the Gauchos people, they couldn't come up with a deal with the Gauchos people, and it's not going through as Gauchos.
Is it going through with something else?
It will be a restaurant, but not a Gauchos.
How long do those last, those permits? Is it 1 year before they have to?
3 years.
3 years, okay.
Anything else, Phil?
No, thank you.
Mr. Shepherd?
Nothing.
Mr. Schultz?
I wasn't gonna say anything, but as we were talking about special events and being approved for multiple years, it harkened me back to many years ago when I was on the traffic committee. And sidewalk variances were granted for multiple years. And I would like to look at the fact that sidewalk variances should be in the purview of the planning commission, not the traffic committee. I think that's a development issue, not a traffic issue. So that, I'm just laying that on the table, that I think it might be more appropriate for sidewalk variances to be granted by this body. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Kempen?
I want to thank Brent and Ben and for all your hard work bringing these. I know it took a lot of time to put those ideas together, and appreciate it. Makes it a lot easier when you come forward with good ideas up front.
Thank you. It's a lot easier when you folks read the packet ahead of time, which is very nice, so it makes our job easier too.
Mr. Stratt?
You know, going back to the special events, it occurred to me that one of the rationales of having it come on every year is the events often change their venue and change their ideas and whatever, and if there are any complaints that come about, then we can actually not permit them to come, and that was one of the reasons for every year. So I recall that now as part of the condition for every year. The other thing, which I think is a good idea, I know it's inconvenient for them, but I do think that it protects us, I mean, the city. At the last meeting, I asked for the shields to be put onto the actual light fixtures to make sure that we're not looking at the light source. And I know that Tom made a comment as it relates to the LEDs that really have a very, very bright light source that really are, it's obnoxious to me. But also we have it right here in our own parking lot. So if you want to take a look at it. But if we're not going to be going that detailed, then why are we doing the 25, or why are we even asking for the curb or the cuts of the photographs of the fixtures themselves? I mean, you know, where do we stop? And where do we start? That's what I'm going to ask that question in my own mind. Should we disregard the 25-foot height on the poles? If we're not going to be policing it for all these aesthetic values, I'm assuming that the 25 is for the aesthetic value. Why aren't we actually controlling the light source itself? So that's something I'm sure there's another discussion, but I thought I'd bring it up.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hudson?
Nothing.
Don? Nothing? Ms. Lancaster? Nothing? Ben? Mr. Simon, nothing? I have nothing. Meeting adjourned.
Great.